When we dance, the journey itself is the point. When we play music, you will simply become completely absorbed in sound. And therefore you will find yourself living in an eternal now in which there is no past and there is no future and there is no thing called difference between yourself and the world of nature outside you.
Welcome to the Think Space podcast with myself, John Staskowski, and Danny Massaro, where we discuss human nature and the practical application of philosophy. To find out more about our cohort course and membership community, please head over to www.thinkspace.academy. We hope you enjoy this episode.
This is red. This is green. This is something. This is nothing. This is solid. This is space. Between yourself and the world of nature outside you.
Okay, so this week we're going to be talking about living in the moment and whether that's a good idea and even whether you can live in the moment. The inspiration for this episode came from a video that Joe Rogan posted and went a little bit viral. You're going to hear that clip. It's about 60 seconds long and it's a speech by Jagadish Vasudev. His honorific title is Sadhguru, and he's an Indian yoga guru and a bit of a proponent of spirituality. So have a listen to the clip and then we'll get into the episode.
Your whole life is happening between these three dimensions: memory, present experience, and imagination. This is your life, isn't it? These are three dimensions. We call them trikala, 3 dimensions of time. All your experience of life is happening here. But if you lose distinction between what is past, what is present, what is future, then everything hurts. But not everybody, terrible things have happened. Unfortunately, for a few people they have happened. But the rest of the people are simply suffering something, isn't it? Because it's fashionable to suffer. People think if they're suffering, they are very intellectual, they're very profound. No, it's just stupid because you're suffering something that doesn't exist. You're not suffering what's happening right now. You're suffering what happened yesterday, and you're suffering something that may happen tomorrow already. So this madness has been encouraged simply because we never train people how to use their faculties.
So we've heard from Jagadish Vasudev, who was the man in the video that everyone's just heard, and he talked about the 3 dimensions of time. So memory, present experience, and imagination, essentially past, present, and future. And the other thing that stimulated us after that in our messages was a quote from the Dalai Lama that, interestingly enough, I'd had on not on the wall, but in my office for the past few years, after a remnant from a kind of Buddhist phase, which we'll probably touch on at some point as we're going through. But he said in this course, this is the Dalai Lama, he was asked what surprised him most about humanity. So this was the Dalai Lama's answer, and he said, man, because he sacrifices his health in order to make money, then he sacrifices money to recuperate his health, and then he's so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present. The result being that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he is never going to die, and then dies having never really lived. This was Danny's response to so I sent him the Joe Rogan clip or the video, and Danny's response to me was, is he taking the piss with a crying, laughing emoji in his WhatsApp message? So that's going to be our start point for today. Go on, Danny, why do you think he's taking the piss?
Well, just to start, I was spending a lot of time back in the day as well, reading all the, Power of Now and all the Eckhart Tolle stuff, and I like the spiritual things. And I think it's romantic. I think it's lovely to think that you could, be like, no worries about the future. You'd have no, bad memories of your past. You would literally be able to just go around as if you lived in a constant present. And if you don't do that, then you've been a fool. You've almost gone against your nature by thinking too much about future projects, past regrets, what your worries that are coming up. So for me, having just finished my PhD essentially on existential, phenomenology and things like that, and the lived experience and how life actually is rather than what it might conceptually be, it just was like, nah, I'm not having that. You're not a dog, you're not a tree, you don't just exist in the constant now. We live through time. So yeah,
Because that's his suggestion, really, isn't it? And we both kind of said it's a very romantic view of forget the past, forget the future, just be in the moment constantly and just live. That's why you're bringing animals in. We've romanticised about that, tongue in cheek a little bit over the years about being a dog, haven't we? So
Yeah.
and there's that classic image of a man and a dog out on a dog walk, and it shows you like a speech or a thought bubble of the man's head, and it's full of all this stuff, time, work, to-do list, shopping, all these things whizzing around its head, and then you see the dog's thought bubble, and it's just tree, sun, and nothing in between. The suggestion is it's just living in that moment, the dog.
Yeah.
No worry, it's just taking life as it comes. So I think that is romanticised, that version, isn't it?
One of my favourite books of all time, ironically, even Joe just said that, is A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And at the time of my life, it was just brilliant. It really helped me. And I still use things from it. So this is where I want to get to. As a whole way of life, being in the now constantly, it's preposterous. But accessing it as a tool now and again, probably more useful, and we can relieve existential pressures and then overdoing it. But the one story I like from Eckhart Tolle, and used to use a lot with nervous athletes and things, and athletes that were a bit overthinking and worried about what people thought about them, which is another natural state we have. Heidegger called it das Man, that they are always looking at us, they're always setting rules. We always feel judged by our social groups and them out there. Well, you get that in little areas, like in the squash world tour, you would have a community. They used to call it like a traveling circus, really. And like we go to all these little places around the world, little where the squash courts up in big cities usually. To be fair, Hong Kong, San Francisco, wherever, China, New York, all these places, and you would all turn up at the same place. So obviously you always felt like you were under scrutiny of this bubble of people. And you probably get that at workplace, or you get that in your sports team and on your street and things like that. So yeah, it can get too much where you're always thinking about what they think about you. So Eckhart Tolle told a story that I tried to get players to try and relate to, so they didn't feel as scrutinized by others. A bit like the mimetic stuff as well, we did lots of time, not setting their value by what everyone else sets life by. And it was called The Duck with a Human Brain. And it was about a duck on a pond. He said he's watched ducks in a pond, and he sat there and fed them. And he's watched them and studied them. He said they'll come along on the pond, and they might fight over a piece of bread that he's thrown them. They'll have this fight, and they'll all the wings will flap out and be going and scrap for it. One of them wins, and then they just float off as if it's never happened. And he said, now if the duck had a human brain, it would be one of them would be floating off the loser, say, going, that flipping duck thinks he owns the pond. Look at him. He's laughing at me now. Well, I'm going to go and gather some mates, and I'm going to get myself stronger. I'll come back one day and I'll never. And he won't do that to me again. And he thinks he thinks he's better than me now, and I'm, and so on and so forth. So what you do, Tolle used that again with other things. Like he said, have you ever seen a dolphin with a midlife crisis? Or have you ever seen a frog who has a personality problem? And it sounds funny, it sounds cute, it sounds good, and it's a story and a metaphor that does point to the fact that, as humans, we do overanalyze, and we do cook up endless stories, and it's really helpful to think that. However, it is absurd because we are not wired that way. We know now, much of the modern neuroscience theory, that we construct emotions to help us survive the next moment. The brain is a prediction machine, which means it's always thinking, it's future orientated, and it uses memory to help with that. So we and to be honest as well, all animals do get, a lot of animals can get problems psychologically. Elephants are known to mourn and be sad and do live through kind of stuff. This is what I'm saying. A lot of this stuff about the now and being in not the zone, but maybe the zone, or mindfulness and being now, quite useful, a bit like it's a tiny bit of medicine, but the core problem isn't that we are defunct as humans because we, worry a lot and we think too much about the past and we have too much nostalgia and we have too much future thinking. I don't see it that way. I just see that as, that's why I like the existential stuff, because that's an existential ambiguous issue we have as people, and accept that that's what it is. And then you might get temporary relief through some of these mechanisms. But as a total way of life, and that's why I thought that, not the Dalai Lama, the guy who said the quote on Rogan, that's why I said, surely he's taking the piss, because we're not that simple.
I mean, it definitely, to me, I mentioned at the start, I did have my Buddhist phase, or the Buddhism phase, was probably mid-20s. And you mentioned mimetic then, when you started talking about, you brought that back into when we talked about that in our last episode. And I think most of my phase around Buddhism was that, because I don't see myself as someone who's particularly ever really struggled with, kind of worry or anxiety and living kind of in my head, whether it's future or past. And whenever I've tried some of the mindfulness stuff, it just doesn't sit with me. Right. But I give it a good go. I read all the books. I remember even going to I don't think it was a monastery, but it was that type of a setup where there's people who are essentially living there, and you go over on like a Friday afternoon, and it's supposed to be like an after work thing. So you go over like 6 o'clock Friday, and you do like a meditation where there's maybe 50 people in the place, led by it's not a priest, obviously, is it? But the kind of the leader of the institution that do this like guided meditation for like half an hour, and then you'd have like a meal. So everyone would sit right, and it'd be like a really basic, simple meal cooked by the people there. And it's supposed to be this kind of real minimalist, really mindful, taking your mind off the day's stresses and that stuff. And I remember just sitting there going, it's not for me. It just I was like bored almost, where if I don't feel like I need to quieten my mind and escape what I'm doing. But I think I love the mimetic element of what that maybe conveyed. So when you were into Buddhism, it maybe just elevated you a little bit, that you're like, you're in touch with your softer side, and you're more in tune with nature and all this kind of stuff. I wonder if that was what attracted me to it, rather than a genuine need to. So it was almost like it was fashionable to do it at the time. And even since then, I've tried it a couple of times, because it was a trend, wasn't it? When the mindfulness apps and stuff came out, it became really trendy to kind of do like a guided meditation. I honestly last about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, what am I escaping from? I don't feel like I'm escaping past or future thing. That for me is more mindful, if anything.
Yeah.
I enjoy thinking about stuff, and not that it's thinking about the past or the future, just thinking in general is always going to be out of the moment.
Yeah.
But I kind of enjoy that. I find that more.
Yeah, because there's a construction, isn't there? There's a construction towards, in your mind, a higher understanding or a different understanding of something. So there's immediately there's a reason, there's a future. If you were in a constant now, you wouldn't need any of that. You'd just be in like this constant series of this moment, this moment, this moment. There'd be no connection between the moments. So, what I found with doing a bit of the meditation stuff was, if I was nervous, going into a nervous state. So particularly for me, if Laura was playing a big match, Hong Kong for some reason, I had these places, at a particular point in a career where I'd been so many times. I had these little places I used to go and sit every tournament, where I found only me who knows what they are, these private little spaces. And in a way, I suppose they became like anchored in my memory, as the feeling immediately kicks in. You smell something, it reminds you of school. It's an instant thing. It's a feeling. So just sitting in the place would make me feel a bit more comfortable. And usually I had time to kill, to be fair. I needed, as a form of distraction, or as a form of just sort of like maybe calming me down, I started to do the Headspace app, the Andy Puddicombe stuff at the time, and I found it really useful, because I always knew that at least for 10 or 15 minutes I wasn't thinking about the match and overthinking it, and I felt pretty nervous. And I would say, sometimes I would go back after it. I think the neurochemistry had changed. I think I'd altered my probably cortisol levels had dropped if you tested me and all that. And probably I was feeling a bit more oxytocin, for a little bit more connection with, usually I was sitting by nature. So I probably had a bit more of a non-dual moment of feeling connection. And then you'd sort of come from that, and then I'd go into the arena, or go by the court, and I was probably in a better position than I'd just carried on like boiling myself up. But that was under high nerves, and the last time I did it was going into my PhD I'd done it and surprised myself because I was flapping. I wasn't. I was like, you need to calm down here. This is getting silly. And I went back to that, and it was. I used it big time, but it just distracted me for a while. To be fair, this time, and I think that's cool. I think that accessing the now, so-called now, and being at one, whether that's losing yourself in an activity, total presence. Like that you're painting or doing a jigsaw, or you do colouring, the colouring books became a good thing, didn't it? Or doing anything really, any hobby. I suppose everyone has their own way of getting into the present. I think that's useful. I think that of course it's useful. It's not that I think that's useful. It's just a fact. It's bloody useful. But we don't permanently exist like that, and that's my sort of thing that I wanted to talk about in my study. When you get into the existentialists, the ones that think existentially, Heidegger especially, Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, all these types, Camus, they all have different takes on it. But essentially, we are beings through time. We are thrown into the world and we are in a project, basically, because we are quickly aware that we have a past and we have a future. Once we hit, 3, 4, 5, 6, and these things are in play all the time. So I would prefer to sort of like focus on addressing the practicalities of your actual life rather than trying to kind of hide from it and just jump back into some amazing now space where you don't really have to face your existential.
So you mentioned PhD vibe, right? It made me remember mine thinking back, and I think for me, it does become that trying to, when you're worried or your nerves are a bit high, because you're doing, essentially, you're going to be doing something that's important to you, aren't it? So that's why it matters to you. So you get nervous.
There's a lot of future there, straight. There's a lot of future.
But my approach to that is like, so yes, it does bring it into the moment. So it's like, right, well, again, it could be a personality thing. It could just be life experiences. Everyone's different. My thing is, all right, immediately, what can I control? So my immediate thing was, right, to say that the morning of my vibe, took myself to the library, had all my notes, had my thesis, and just kind of worked out. And there's a massive future focus because essentially in that scenario, you're thinking, what might I be asked? What might they challenge me on here? So you've got all those projects to me being in that room, being interrogated by 3 other examiners, and I'm imagining it. And then there's clearly the past because it's like, all right, why did I write this? Why did I put that in there? What was I thinking when I made that decision around a study, for example? So there's a massive past element to it. That, to me, is very present-based, isn't it? It's taking into that present moment of, I've got a scenario that's quite stressful, I'm going to proactively deal with it, but that involves me going back and forward.
Yeah.
So I'm very much in the future and the past, but to me, it's very grounded in the present.
Well, if you actually look at, one of the things Heidegger said is you are constantly building your past by what you do in your future. You are, if you get that PhD, you have re-edited your view of perhaps your whole educational journey from the age of 3. Do you know, in some way, you've changed the previous film. If you've altered your past narrative, you've altered the way you think your parents think about you. You've altered the way you think that old teacher thinks about you who said you were thick. You're building your future so you can re-edit your past. That's one way of, I thought I was period. When Laura won the World Championships, I remember going absolutely nuts, jumping around like a flipping fish out of water. I just couldn't, every time it hit the ground, I was jumping back up. It's like, shocked me. And I think it was like relief of everything. And I could almost literally feel all the past decisions I'd ever made just going click, 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 world champion, click, 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 world champion, click, click. Everything's been worth it. You know what I mean? When a hero write the story and it turns out well, it's like, oh, everything was just character building. Everything was just meant to be at the time. You weren't if you don't do anything in your future, the past remains quite stuck as what you've decided it to be. So we are, that's where you can use time and also, there's more time running out. And that was Heidegger's being towards death. If you use it properly, it can get you in ship shape into some action and go, hey, come on a minute. I've got to appreciate my family a little bit more here. I've got to go and visit my dad a bit more often because he ain't going to be here to be brutally, I can't see him making it past 90. So how many times am I going to visit him now? So I want to go, I better make it quality. Well, that could be seen as a negative thought. Oh, don't think that, your dad's going to die or I'm going to die. But if you address it and work with time, it can actually be very, very useful. A bit like goal setting can be, and basic targets. So yeah, I think there's been this. I think there's been this big jumping into mechanisms, whether it's cold water therapy, mindfulness, yoga, all good stuff, all useful, but not an answer to necessarily utopian way of living and escaping being human.
And in that video, so Jagadish Vasudev in the initial video, he's had admitted about suffering as well, hasn't he? He said, so these people are suffering what happened yesterday, and they're suffering what may happen tomorrow. And he made some kind of a quip about how the people that are doing that suffering kind of see that as a good thing almost. It kind of intellectualizes them a little bit. So because they're suffering, they see that as a good. And that resonated with me a little bit, because it's like, well, why does the past have to be something you suffer? Now, clearly everyone has different life experiences. Obviously, a lot of people's lives can be quite traumatic. Other people's can be pretty plain sailing. But I think it's a generalization to say, well, just because you think about something in the past, you're suffering it.
It's that a baby boy, and my mum's over visiting, and like loads of old memories and nostalgia's coming out that I've forgotten about, and it's like amazing. Brilliant. It's making me, I'm digging into the past, and it's all good. Of course there's some bad parts. It's not all bad. Do you know what I mean? To be fair, I've got some nice, and that's, you're right, everybody will have a different interpretation and narrative going on of their past. And that's linked to perception anyway, isn't it? Relativity to other people's lives often and sometimes, and how you've internalized things. So, yeah, one of the things if you actually look at time in itself, this was interesting, actually, what is time? So even to talk about that, there's many philosophies of what time even is. Kant said that, it's just a mind-made construction. It doesn't exist out there in the universe. In other words, if there were no humans around at all, there would be no time. Now, other people have said different, but essentially it's a man-made creation. But one person that took it on in a bit more of a lived experience way of looking at time was Bergson. He talked a lot more about how the past and future and the present interlink all the time. So it's not separate distinctions like you might look at in clock time or something. That was 1 o'clock, that was 2 o'clock, was 3. That came before that came after that, and the 3 o'clock came last. He actually said we actually mostly. We use clock time, obviously, so that we're all lined up, and in space, we bump into each other at the right time, sort of thing, and get on phone calls together and stuff. But essentially, the past, the present, the future are experienced in most of the time in an integrated, interlinking way, and in a flowing flux way. And so it's always in play in the present. If you think about music, he used the example of music. When you listen to a song, it flows. You don't hear it as maybe the person who constructed it on, nowadays on the computer, like that sound, that sound, that sound. You hear it as a whole. You imagine listening to a piece of music without just hearing the bit before and the bit coming in. It wouldn't be music as you listen to it. Also, like, what about when you listen to music and you've heard the song before, how it changes? So that's your memory coming in as well. Or what about, and that's not, so you know what's coming, and how and how you're predicting the crescendo of the song to come. So you're listening to a song and you know what's going to kick in at the end, Sweet Caroline or something like that, and it's all interlinked. You can't say, oh, don't think about what's coming on at the end of the song. Just being this, you've missed that beat. You weren't in the moment.
Beat in a club, the beat, the DJ's building you up, and it's like, yeah, he's getting you ready for any when he drops the beat. Everyone knows what's coming, and it goes off, doesn't it? But that's all future oriented.
Future, it's anticipation. Anticipation is knowing there's a future, and even animals have that, as well. So I don't know about rocks and stones and trees, maybe, but what there's an anticipation. So animals have. So you start to go, hang on a minute, do I really, really want to be in the now all the time? Because I'm going to miss out on a lot of pleasures like anticipatory excitement. How boring would music be if you couldn't, how boring would art be if you couldn't bring yourself to it? Who is yourself? Yourself is who you are in your life journey and your identity. So you go to look at a piece of art and you just see it as like colours. You don't see it as more meaningful because of things you've been through. That's a different way of looking at art, not always a better way to look at art by just, just being totally in the moment.
I think holidays are like that too. A lot of the benefit of a holiday, or let's call it the enjoyment, comes from the anticipation. So you book it, and then you've maybe got, say, 3 months of you're buzzing, aren't you, because it's coming, and it's all anticipation.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, if you have a good time, that's in the bank, isn't it? The memory bank. So a lot of it's recollected. Oh, remember when we did that, and that was such a good day when we did this.
Yeah.
Often it's not in the moment of the holiday. Yeah, and you might be lying on the beach going, oh, this is brilliant. I'm chilled out. I am loving it. But a lot of the overall thing is past and future, or it's anticipation and looking back.
You can be on a beach, can't you, now, and you're there and you're led there and you're looking at the sea for like a minute and wow, it's beautiful, it's glistening, and you see, hello, what a brilliant. Yeah, you might want to jump up and take a picture. Why, Bill? Because it's nice to take a picture and remember it. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that you're a modern idiot who can't appreciate the moment. All right, if you're snapping away all the time and it's coming out of control, you probably aren't quite getting enough of the moments where you can just think. So it is this thing, isn't it? It's this being. Can you at times access just being and being there at play, like children often do? So sometimes in your week, based on your personal circumstances, can you find ways to just be? So I'm not against any particular mechanism that can get you to just feel and just be. It's hard to exist all the time thinking of your past and your futures, but you can't just dismiss it, and just as if it's the bad way to live. It's a great way. It's a great way to think as well.
Yeah, for me, that is genuinely more mindful. It's having that ability to appreciate that's what we're like as humans. So you'll often see the human, what separates humans from beasts, so the dogs and the animals like we've talked about. But actually, yeah, to me, that's a good thing. It's like, don't hate on humans and think, well, I'd rather just be a dog wandering around with an empty head and getting the smell of the grass.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, no, actually, it's a positive thing to appreciate it, that we've got these chinks in our psychology and don't see it as a negative. Go, actually, I will embrace that.
Right.
Yeah, it's a bit absurd, and, time's this mad thing that we live by. What's that about? But it's seeing the humour in it, isn't it? And appreciating. Yeah, it's a bit weird that.
Absolutely.
We can actually enjoy that.
It's one of being a human. It's one of the strengths of being a human that you can think through time. Yes, it's debilitating at times. It's worrying and all that. But then they're all, why has it actually biologically developed in evolutionary terms? It's obviously got some sort of function and it's useful. I can understand why people want to get on drugs, and dope themselves out and drink and switch it off.
We've got, that's an important caveat, isn't it? That I've tried to allude to a couple of times. We're not belittling anyone who's got a tough life, because let's be honest, there's a lot of people that are living tough life at the minute where they would listen to this and go, what a pair of idiots. Who were there to comment on, I should enjoy being a human. We totally appreciate that and get that. So yeah, it's not to belittle those scenarios or circumstances whatsoever.
No, but it's like in Eckhart Tolle's book, again, he talks about any negative emotion. He talks about it as like, it's the bad thing. You're just stupid for even having any negative emotion because you're just bringing it on yourself. And I'm like, no, you're not. Things are just aren't good. I'm nothing stimulating me. I'm bored. I'm worried about that. That's coming in. You're not making up a negative emotion if you live on the border of Ukraine at the moment, are you? You actually have physical threats in life and your family and everything, and it's brutal. So what I mean is like, well, you might move or get yourself armored up, rather than just going and doing, 20 minutes of yoga in a room and open, it goes away. And I think this is the thing with sport, and performances in a business and at work. There's an action-orientated side to the psychological side if you actually react. So by thinking of things that might be, and that can include negative things, maybe you can polish yourself up and adapt and anticipate a problem, and get yourself ready for it. So if you get in a sport, let's say you get to a close moment and it's 30-all and it's Roger Federer against, Djokovic or something, and he's thinking, right, I know what happens in the 5th set with Djokovic. 9 times out of 10 he wins. That ain't me being negative. That's just our age and his strengths versus my strengths, practically speaking. right, all my energy that I have left predicting what I've done in this match already, I need to get it here and now and push. And he makes a calculated or instinctive, that might be not as calculated as we think, but he's using what's gone on in the match, what might come, what's gone on in previous matches, and he's basically seizing the moment, putting it in a, whether that's a really obviously conscious calculation he makes or just a more of a background meditative, intuitive thing that springs to mind because he's very experienced, he senses it type thing.
Even that because that is a common interpretation of this kind of vibe, isn't it? That being in the zone. I think you mentioned it earlier in sports. Yeah. Who's in the zone? They're in the zone, and the connotation that's often given is that they're very much in the moment. There's no past or future. They are just reacting, and it's like, well, even in a squash rally, you might be in the middle of a rally, but you're still trying to maybe maneuver your opponent to a particular weak area of the court. You're thinking ahead. You're calculating. You're not just reacting like a dog to sounds and scents and smell.
Consequences still. You were a player. Your body might be acting independently. The feeling that it's acting independently of your conscious thought, but the system, your whole system, still knows that it's better to stay on the rope than fall off it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So Philippe Petit, when he did the 2 towers, and he walked across it, he said he was floating, he was having this experience, but he still was like, and I realised it was time to come down. I've been up there quite a bit. So, and I think there's been so many books and, Zen, archery and all these things. I think they are states that you can access, and higher states and LSD and all those things. You can access these particular areas. Probably they feel amazing. But again, I think that's to say that Roger Federer just went into some Zen moment and something took over and he beat Djokovic. And I'm trying to say that to people that try and help. It's like, kind of got to accept that it is important to think and not, and at certain times you really need to think. And certain times the calculative thinking in that moment you might consciously go, no, I'm not thinking my way through. I'm gonna laugh my way through it. I'm gonna try and float my way through it. I'm gonna just see what arises and let go of my thinking. But that's still so that the bottom line is I win the match, which is better than losing the match. So it's still future oriented. It's not like you just, I'll tell you what, who cares about anything in sport anymore because I've just found the key to life, which is just being at home. That's where it's a bit dangerous when it's sold to you, the power of now, the problem with time, the zone book. It's like, nah, I get you pointed to a state, you're trying to make it a solution to just being a person.
I think the language of it as well. What do you think the role that might play in it? So it just reminded me of that. It's like a George Carlin bit in his stand-up where he's talking about, it's like a bit where he's kind of criticising self-help books. And he kind of makes the point that even the term self-help doesn't make sense, because if you read a book and that helps you, you didn't help yourselves, did you? You had to read the book and that was what ended up helping you. What? And it's obviously, he's making it funny, but it's true. So a lot of even the word suffering, so in the original video, the Agonish where he said these people are suffering. Well, how do you go about defining that? So that means, so we're all on the same page when it comes to, well, yeah, you're suffering by thinking about the past and thinking about the future to you. Well, what is it to suffer? Everyone's different, aren't they? Your suffering might be my enjoyment, as an example. So even the term like in the zone, well, what's the zone? How are you defining that? What is it, a feeling? Is it an actual thing that you can even try and define?
It's just proven as well by the search for it. It's not an accessibly constant state unless you do, the yogi go and live 4 years in the mountains and eventually, that was how the Buddha, for example, apparently found enlightenment, wasn't it? Just sitting under a tree for as long as he could, and the system went to a new place. So there probably are those places you can access, but to the average person, everyday person who goes about the business, you are fully aware that you have tonight, tomorrow, next week, next year, and so on. So it's your relationship with that and working on that relationship and navigating your way through it and trying things and whatever you do, and again, I don't think there's any perfect solution to that. So the relationship with that switching it off, switching it on, using it, taking part with it, and orientating yourself a lot from where you are now, where you want to be in your future, what your capabilities and skills and opportunities are, probably based on your past and so on, and what you have around you at the time. And it's orientating yourself between where you are, what you want, and what you want tomorrow, what you want later on tonight. Or better go down the shops, buy some food because I need to eat tonight. And I just think a lot of the stuff around the meditation and all this, it sort of like dismisses that part. And that's why I think where it's taken too far and too into it, you start to see breakdowns. It's not a coincidence, is it? It's like a breakdown from the modern Western way, as if the Western modern way of having what you want and building your house. So it's almost like, let's go the other way. Nothing matters. You don't need clothes. You don't need security. You don't need to get married. You don't need to know all these things. You just need to be with yourself in the now, be beautiful, man. And it starts to go more to that stereotypical hippie type thing. And I know a lot of people going around the world trying to be yoga teachers and all of this, and they're saying all this stuff to me and going on about it. And there's not loads of self-fulfillment at the end of the day, because the future's coming at them, whether they like it or not, like a tidal wave building out at sea.
Do you think that's possibly what this domain is maybe playing on a little bit? Because that's an elephant in the room with me. You can't deny that the self-help genre. So these books, I mean, we've mentioned a few of them over the weeks, haven't we? You're talking about, I can't tell that. I'm sure he sold millions of books.
Yeah.
Especially his initial, and he's made big Bangkok.
Yeah.
What he does. And then there's the talks and the stuff on the back of it. It's big business. So it's almost like, I wonder if a lot of this is because we have that, that denial of death that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And we might do a thing on Ernest Becker's work at some point.
Yeah, right.
Because people are, it's like taboo, isn't it? Don't even think about that. Don't even go there, that this mortal being and you are going to die at some point. We try and avoid that at all costs, don't we? And I wonder if that's where these gurus can kind of step in, put their arm around you a little bit and go, don't worry about that, just be in the moment, just forget that stuff. I've got this book, listen to this, lecture that I did, the old school Osho lectures and stuff. Even they're really quite romantic when you watch them back.
Yeah.
And you can get behind it and this is brilliant.
Yeah.
They suck you in, don't they?
I still like listening to Alan Watts.
Well, especially when you put a bit of music to it, and it's all like, and it's...
What an amazing... He's got such a great voice, hasn't he?
It lures you in. It's very alluring. I think that's a good term for it.
And I also think when you're listening to it, it's so well written in terms of the metaphors and the stories, like Jesus and the Bible. Lilies in the field and birds of the air, and you go, what's he on about? Lilies in the field. Go and see how the lilies in the field grow and take a lesson from them. Oh yeah, like just be. And there is a part of your being that you are like that. You can't just be. You should just plod. Try and just be. For the most part, we haven't evolved that way. Well, we're through time. We think through time we're not in time as much as we'd like to be. And obviously modern life and probably exasperated it as well. That doesn't mean that we're all doomed and it's all going to be a nightmare and we're not like our true nature where we should just be not thinking at all. It's more like the quality of your thinking and the quality of your relationships with your past and future. But what I mean is, when these books, they tell so many nice, easy parables and so many nice stories in a nice, floaty way, like a nursery rhyme, but a bit more, maybe a bit more intellectual, that once you think you understand it, it's attractive. It's like, just because you understand the story, you can't help but like it. It's hard to just dismiss it because you think, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, you made that point about the Dalai Lama quote that we started with. So one of your comments was, that essentially his final line in that passage is absurd. So he finishes it with, he lives as if he is never going to die and then dies having never really lived. And your kind of gut reaction was, yeah, but that, just as a sentence, if you see it as a standalone sentence, that's absurd, what he's saying. But because he's lured you in with the initial 3 or 4 sentences with it, he's kind of got you on board and you're like, yeah, I'm with him. So you almost just let that last bit flow over you.
Yeah.
Without critiquing it or accepting it. But it is, if he lives as if he's never going to die and then dies having never really lived. Well, of course he's lived as a physical human being. It's an absurd comment. to make. But we ignore it and go, yeah, it's all like the soothing Dalai Lama with his little robe. And
when you're dead, you don't care about that. You know, like in a weird way, you know, and it's like you're going to be post-death going, I know, you were right, Dalai Lama. What did I do? You're dead. And it's in films, isn't it? Like, you know, the Wizard of Oz and things, and where they sort of, they uncover a bit of shyster, mind manipulation of where you're sucked in, and then they can basically say anything, and you just go, oh, that makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, you go, well, I need another week on that because I'm clever and I get this person, so I will work this out. And they could literally say anything. So you see that a lot in the stories, don't you? Like, you know, it's like it's a no lose situation for me, you know, because it's so intuitively abstract. And we all do the puzzle. It's like what you might do to distract a kid, or magicians do it, don't they? Like distraction, and then they do something. Some of the spiritual stuff, there is distraction going on. Saying that, obviously, it's helpful to people. Again, even if the magic's good for people, isn't it? It's nice to be tricked sometimes and see magic, even though you know it's fake. It's nice feeling to listen to these weird things, soothing voices, Alan Watts, monk stories. As long as you know what it is, as long as you kind of can almost go meta on yourself and almost laugh at yourself falling for it. Like when you maybe go to church and the stories sound all great and you're actually getting a nice feeling and an emotional, maybe some strength and courage from it. But you're also not just falling for it headline and sinker, and you're just like,
I do wonder if as well it's a lot of this type of messaging where, because it does appeal, you can't deny it, it is alluring. I wonder if that idea of a theory, if some of that is because just as humans now in the society that we're in and the way culture is and just how we've evolved to be this, the force that we are of destruction in the world, as it were, with the technologies we've got and everything. Is that so far removed of how we'd evolved before then? We're so out of touch with nature. And being in touch with that in the moment, in the right sense of, it's, this is the season. This is what we do at this time of year. We're now getting this crop ready and we're doing that. And that's when this animal migrates from there to there. And you're very in tune with the way the world's just, not on a time sense, just about the seasons, nature dictate. Does this stuff appeal a little bit because we sense that we're maybe missing that? So, like to be like the lily in the field, or just be a dog, as people be more like a dog. Do we yearn for that a little bit, maybe subconsciously, because we've come so far from it, we're so far away from that we sense that we do need that, but we've almost just lost the ability in the modern environment that we're in.
I once studied some stuff on spiral dynamics. Claire Graves looked at what makes a healthy human being, an American psychologist who knocked around with Maslow and stuff. And they sort of looked at, they talked about how value systems emerged in people all the way back to maybe Neolithic people. But as soon as there were tribes, as soon as it was dog eat dog, as soon as it was like, if I don't kill you, you're killing me. So once the basic, species survival had occurred, then the brain starts, doesn't it? This survival, like, right, whereas in a way, the mechanism of future and past was there straight away. What happened last week? Well, they came over and did that. Right, well, we've got to do this then, haven't we? Because we can't have that again. And then obviously it goes into like dating time then, doesn't it? Like with moons and dates and festivals and so it gets tribal, then shamanic. It must have been going on straight away. The mind was future and past orientated, and as soon as that happened, there will have been all the scheming, the worrying, the plotting, the memories, the what's nice, what's not nice, what got to do next week, what got to do later. I think obviously then it goes on and on and on all the way to modern life. Clock time comes in, clocking on, and so on and all that, and then you come to cultures now that Nietzsche said, the comfortable people, what you call the last man, the ones that are all comfortable, then they will worry unnecessarily because they won't be just getting their head down, getting the food in, dealing with their immediate survival, things to keep going. But they'll be so comfortable that won't be a problem. You've got heating, you've got food, you've got social stuff. Then you're going to worry. You need something then to worry about. So you start oh, what are the neighbours doing? Oh, what's going on down in London? Oh, China have just put a boat on Taiwan over there. So with the technology in the news, you're starting then also to worry about the future across massive scales where you would never have got that. You'd have just been worrying about what was happening, over the hill. So I do
I think that's a huge point. The level of sensory input now. We've never had to deal with this amount of information, have we? Constantly hitting you 24/7.
Yeah.
Info. So it's no wonder that you start feeling a bit overwhelmed with just the amount of stuff to think and worry about.
Yeah. But if say you're worrying about some things at the moment on the news, say, but like I don't know, you're in the storm and your garden gets flooded, right, and it's coming in your back door, like what could have happened this week. Suddenly, you ain't got time to be thinking about that one. You're dealing with getting the water out of your house, and then you're getting your electricity back on, and suddenly you're kind of like gone back small again, dealing with what's on your plate in front of you. And I think in a way that's a skill, as well. Just have things, obviously life gets forced upon you and situations happen, but for me again, in a sports match, you're like, oh my God, I'm about to win Wimbledon and this means this and this means this and that'll mean that. And I can, that starts to be like, it starts to grow, all the future consequences and future, but good and bad consequences. Whereas if you can just go, right, it's 30-all, this is a massive point, I'm 2 points away from the match ball, from winning the match, the tournament. They don't like the backhand. Last time I did this in that last match we played, he thought I was going to go down the middle. I went wide, so I'm going to double bluff him. You're dealing with what's in front of you in a future past. You're not just like hiding out and just going, oh, I'm just going to stay here and let it emerge that I win this match. No, you grab it, make a conscious decision and go for what you've decided. And I think that's a metaphor, again, for like general life. If you hunker down into your own business, instead of sorting out the world's problems, sort out your own back garden type thing and clean your room and all that stuff that Peterson was on about, by running away, like get yourselves together and be ready for the impending flood that comes your way. It's the Noah's Ark metaphor, isn't it? That you're be ready for the flood. Get yourself prepared by using your predictions and using your memories, and that's the same. It's like get to work with your brain in tandem. Don't just overwhelm yourself and just go, oh my God, nothing's worth it, because it's all going to crap anyway. And I think that's that's where you can go into the nihilistic realms of depression and the world's terrible. No point bringing children into the world. And have humans not learned anything? Oh, we're terrible. That to me is just like, yeah, it's bad, but stop going on about humans, that we're all awful and greedy and capitalist and ruining the world. And
I think that's because we wanted to end on some practicalities, really, didn't we? And I think that maybe summarised that quite well, that aspect of, we're not saying that the Dalai Lama and Jagadish Vasudev are just, con men and they don't know what they're talking about. There's always some relevance in there and some useful stuff in there, but I think it's dangerous in that you could get sucked into that too much, couldn't you? Whereas everything, as soon as you think about anything that's remotely ahead or behind, it's like, oh my God, I'm out of the moment. I need to get back in the moment. We just thought that hammering it that much is it's quite dangerous, isn't it? But it's also, if you are zooming in a little bit and you're making it practical in terms of, for me, what you just said there was control the controllables.
Yeah.
So ultimately, there's all this stuff going on, and there might be stuff that's quite worrying, and it's just taking up brain space. You're chewing on it and you're constantly turning it over. So for me, it's all right, what can I control? So if your house is flooding or the weather forecast's horrendous, you don't panic about that. You think, right, well, how can I barricade my house up a little bit or make it more resistant to flooding? And that's all we're saying, isn't it? It's like, take this stuff with a pinch of salt and just maybe consider how you can control the controllables. Yeah, you don't feel like you're getting ahead of yourself, but
you have an internal and an external aspect to your existence. What you think inside, and obviously what you do, your behaviours. And you also have a private individual, and you have a social. So you have an internal, independent view, and you have an external social. You can have an internal social as well, where how you think about your society and stuff, or it's just how you think about yourself, which is an internal individual, or an internal social, where you think about other people and the people the species in a way, or your people. It's just important that you think your way through each of those areas. You can sort your own head out within yourself, sort your behaviours out and your responses and your actions. So your behaviours, what you actually do. And what I see sometimes, that I see some people, they're very stuck in the behaviours, their external self, but they struggle internally in the inside thing, how they feel. You also get the others who think the way all the time, that they're quite happy inside, they're quite floaty and happy, but externally, they don't really make progress, and then it catches up with them. So same with being too selfish, too like I'm fine, and myself and individually I'm okay, and not giving enough to other people or taking other people's needs into account. You have to use past and present in all of those situations. They're in play. They're in the mix, so you don't just want to totally shut that off. And I think if you're a human being, it's a shame to run from that rather than try and re-edit it or re-edit your narrative, get a better narrative going about your life, which leads to some positive action. You can come at it from both sides. You can do some actions and then you feel self-fulfilled and happy and things go your way and it changes your internal state. Or you can start from the internal states and how you think about things, and that encourages towards action. That might be in confidence, dealing with nerves, dealing with how you feel about yourself and all like that then leads to action. Or you can do the thing itself, just dive in, and then by doing it, that then comes back and changes your natural levels of confidence. There's both. That's a behaviourist view versus a more of a Freudian inside view. But these things, you always got to play around with it and put the effort in, really.
And ultimately, like we said, it's just embrace it. Being a human being, I think, isn't it? We're not dogs. We're not lilies in field. We are human beings with brains that are capable of quite high-level cognition. That is just a part of how we've got to be here in the first place. So just embrace that a little bit for me and try not to deny it all the time.
You're going to stress, you're going to worry, you're going to think you've got it sorted one day and the next day you haven't. All these things are going to happen. There's not really a lot of escape from it. You're going to think well, you're going to anticipate well, you're going to have joy. So you get the rough and the smooth, but try not to escape that constant ambiguity all the time. Just ride it out. And that's your view about all things as well. Well, I think the news is very down on humans in general. All the news tends to be how somebody's basically shafted someone else. And I just think that's you might feeling okay inside, but in the background, you're starting to really doubt your society and you're doubting people. And I saw a story about a man who rescued a cat, and it really restored my, my faith in human nature. And it's well, where was it in the first place? You look around, there's all sorts of things going. The news doesn't help. And lastly for me, you don't want to be the rescuer all the time, almost loving the fact that people are off it a bit and I've got the solutions and, I can make the money out of you. It's almost like, hang on a minute, wake up a bit, you guys. Let's just get back real again here. Let's rebalance yourself out about what you're thinking about the world as a place and yourself as a part of that human race. And it is pretty normal to be going for all these things. And there's no escape route. So I'm going to leave you with that for a while. Obviously, if they really go off it, mental illness, that's another kettle of fish. Just generally in this well-being stuff and all these things, it's get your balance right. Start trying. Cut down on the news. Start to look for good news stories. Start to look what is faith. Look. Think of your parents or the good thing they did for you. Or just keep going on ruminating on the bad thing they did once or twice. Think of all the nice things and the way you were brought up. Think of your society and all the people that put you where you are. And they're all good people, And it's kind of like it's like telling them to wake up a bit and rebalance it than just coming in and going, yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Just do this mental imagery process or read this book or do this. Go and do, mindfulness all the time. That's how I think that you can help yourself think in that way as well.
Look at us coming over all humanists.
Well, I think you've said that anticipatory resoluteness, which is a great thing. Basically, that an inauthentic way of thinking about the past is forgetting. An inauthentic way of doing the present is making it present. An inauthentic way of doing the future is awaiting. And an authentic way of doing the past is to repeat and retrieve. An authentic way of doing the present is to have a moment of vision, and an authentic way of doing the future is anticipation. And it makes sense. An inauthentic way of looking at your past is forgetting. Forget it. inauthentic way of looking at your present is making it present. And an inauthentic way of being in your future is just waiting around or waiting for stuff. And in a way, our podcast here, it is that, in a way, we are doing that through the podcast. We're bringing up old memories. We're saying stories we once did. We're bringing good shit, bad bit. And we're only doing the podcast to help people. So we're like, wake up because the future's good. You naturally start to perceive the world as visionary. That's Heidegger. That's what, for me, Heidegger really worked.
There's 3 things for people maybe to consider. Just consider whether you're using this stuff. So if you've maybe had your Buddhist phase, or you find these kind of quotes and speeches appealing, are you maybe just using it as a little bit of a get out from the absurdity of being a human being? We'll maybe do an episode on absurdity at some point soon. Maybe consider what your relationship with time is. So what is your relationship to past, present and future, and how do you use it, or maybe does it use you? And then finally, how might you go about embracing things like memory and imagination in a positive way? So rather than seeing it as suffering, if you look back or you look ahead, like the original video that we played showed, how can you use that as a positive? So we're actually embracing memory and imagination moving forward.
When we dance, the journey itself is the point. When we play music, you will simply become completely absorbed in sound. And therefore you will find yourself living in an eternal now, in which there is no past, and there is no future, and there is no thing called difference between yourself and the world of nature outside you. This is red. This is green. This is something. This is nothing. This is solid. This is space. Between yourself and the world of nature outside you.